I stumbled into an eerie ghost town, and it wasn't what I expected. I was on a road trip by myself heading through the Midwest when I passed through an abandoned town, or a ghost town. I've always wanted to explore abandoned places, but I've never had the time or just didn't want to get in trouble with the police. I decided to pull off into the parking lot of an old gas station. I turned my truck off and hopped out. I started looking around at the pumps. They were rusty and the glass covering the meter was foggy. I took a picture of one of the pumps and sent it to my friend who usually goes exploring things. He didn't read it right away, so I just went inside the gas station. Lucky enough for me, someone already broke the door down, so I could easily get inside. I was fascinated with how well preserved the inside looked. There were some old snacks still on the shelves, drinks in the non-running fridges, and the cash register was still up at the front. The drawer was open, so someone either stole the money or they got it when the store closed. I started to examine the bags of chips and took a guess that this town was abandoned in the mid-90s. I looked around for a few more minutes, then left. I started walking over to another building. When I turned back around, I didn't want to leave my truck where it could easily be stolen, so I drove it over to the next building I was going to explore. This building looked like an apartment building. It was white and the windows were all boarded up. I searched around for an entrance but didn't find one. I tried the doors and luckily the back door was unlocked. The building smelled horrible and I knew people were living in here. My friend texted back and asked, "Are you finally exploring?" I replied with, "Yes, I finally am." He called me and I went back outside to take the call. "Where are you exploring?" he asked. "Oh, just some ghost town," I replied. "Who's with you?" "Just me and my trusty Chevy C1500. "Of course. You really don't need to explore alone, you know that, right? I have my gun in the truck. I'll be fine. Keep it on you in case someone tries to jump you." "Okay, it's in my waistband of my jeans." "Good. Make sure you can get to it quickly just in case, and make sure you're fully loaded." "I am. I'm keeping the safety on though." "Okay, just be safe and don't kill yourself." "I'll try not to. See you later." "See ya." I hung up the phone and put it back in my pocket. The sun was beginning to set, but I couldn't fight the urge to explore just a few more buildings. I went back inside the apartment building and was met with the horrible smell again. Smelled like old food and dead things. I was hoping it wasn't a human body and was just a large amount of dead mice, but it could be anything. The first floor was pretty much stripped out except for a few tables or homeless beds. I pulled my gun out and kept it low and headed up to the second floor. I didn't see anything in the hallway, but there was a curtain covering one of the rooms. I wasn't stupid enough to look inside. The other room was open, so I went inside. I turned my safety off and started looking around. Inside, there was a cheap-looking bed, a desk, a TV stand with an old box TV, a kitchen, and a filthy-looking couch. The TV was busted and the bed covers were all messed up. I walked over to the kitchen and started looking through all the cabinets. There was eerily preserved everyday life things such as sugar, cereal boxes, spices, pots and pans, dishes, and other kitchen things. I started thinking about all the memories that could have been made here and who lived here. The thoughts overwhelmed me, but they quickly cleared when I started hearing footsteps in that room with the doorway covered. I quietly hid behind the bar in the kitchen. I had my gun in my hand in case this person or thing wasn't friendly. A man came out from behind the curtain. He was wearing a dirty blue hoodie and some stained jeans. His face was covered and he had his hood up. The mysterious man walked down the hallway and outside. I watched out the window where my truck was visible. He started eyeing my truck. I slowly made my way downstairs. But by the time I got down there, the man was already down the street. I assumed he was going to buy drugs or go to the bathroom, so I left the building. I got in my truck and started it up. It's not a quiet truck, so the guy was probably going to keep his eye on me if he sees me driving around. It was really starting to get dark, so I decided 2 more buildings. I drove over to the neighborhood part of the town and picked the biggest house to explore. I could hear some commotion in a small house down the street, so I kept the safety on my gun off. I went around back and discovered some cars under a little carport. One was a boring old Toyota Camry, and there was one under a cover. I pulled the blue tarp off the top, and it was a 1976 Chevy Camaro. I went around to the front of it and saw the Z28 badge. The big house and the Z28, these people must have been loaded. But I was still confused on the fact why they would just leave everything here, like this beautiful car. I'm a car guy, so I spent about 20 minutes looking at it. I finally made my way back to the house. I went inside, and this house looked untouched. The house was clean, except for a little broken glass. The furniture looked clean, but very dusty, as expected. They had nice recliners, a nice TV for the era, and they had fine china in the kitchen cabinets. These people were definitely the loaded people in town. I wanted to find out some more history, but there was no one to ask. I just kept looking around the house. I saw the door to a basement and peeked inside. Looked like a typical basement: washing machine, dryer, furnace, water heater, so I didn't bother going down there. I looked around in the few other rooms on the first floor, but didn't find anything super cool. I went upstairs to the top floor and saw some odd dolls pinned to the wall. Weird. I didn't have my gun in my hand, since this house didn't really feel all dangerous. I walked over to a door and opened it up. This room caught my attention. It had loads of model cars still in the box just on display. I assumed this guy was a car guy, just like me. I look at most of the models that I took a liking in, fighting the urge to load all of them up in the bed of my truck and drive away with them. I moved on to the next room. The next room was a bedroom. Looked like a boy's bedroom. It was messy, with clothes and toys all over the floor. There was a paper on the desk in the corner. I picked it up. It had a date on it. The date said 6/23/97, so this paper is from June 23rd, 1997. The paper read, "The government is forcing us to leave the town. There was a problem with the lab at the hospital, and now everyone has to leave with just the bare essentials. Mom and Dad are making us take the station wagon, even though I want to take the Camaro. Anyways, I wrote this paper because I was bored, and if anyone finds this, Tamagotchis are the best. From Evan. The paper seemed very strange to me. What happened in that lab? Was a creature created? Was something on the loose? Why couldn't people take everything? Why didn't this kid's parents take the Camaro? So many thoughts. I put the paper back on the table, since it's the only thing that tells the history on this town so far. I took a picture of it and posted it on Instagram. I also started thinking about the Tamagotchi part. I remember mine, I never took care of it, I never took care of anything. My mom told me I should start caring for my Tamagotchi more. I asked why. She replied with, because if you don't care of things, they won't last. Even something as simple as that changed my whole outlook on things. The owner of this house must have known that lesson. I looked around the room a little bit more, and then headed outside. I could hear some strange noises like screaming. I got in my truck and put the gun on the seat next to me. I cranked my window down and slowly drove through the streets. There was one street light in the distance. It was flickering. There was something standing under it, so I rolled my window up in case it tries to jump inside. I slowly pulled up next to it. It was the homeless guy from earlier. I couldn't see his face earlier since he had something covering it, and his hood was up. But now I could see it. It scared me. His face was half eaten away by who knows what. He was just standing there, looking down the road I just drove. I was examining him closer when he snapped his head right at my truck. It scared the crap out of me. I asked if he was all right through the window. No response. I asked again. No response again. I drove away from him, shivering a little bit. I turned around and saw him still looking at me. His body was facing down the road, but his head was turned all the way around. I turned the corner up here and started to make my way towards Main Street. I saw another person standing in the yard of another abandoned house. The same thing was wrong with their face. For now, they seemed peaceful, but I wasn't going to say that they were. I found Main Street, and there were more people or things lining the street on each side. There were 4 on each side of the street just staring at me. A few of them were bloody, and they were smiling with the scariest smile I'd ever seen. I put the pieces together. These were the people affected by the hospital lab problem. I guaranteed that's what the problem was, and that's why everyone had to leave. I drove on the street in between them, and their gaze followed my truck. Only their heads moved. Their bodies stayed locked in one direction. I took a picture of them. I started slowly driving off. That's when they started following me. They walked towards me and stopped when they were about 10 feet away from my truck. I drove forward, they followed. I backed up, they backed up. It was super weird. It felt like they were robots programmed to always stay within 10 feet of my truck. I drove into the gas station lot, and sure enough, there they were. I imagined that they were going to follow me home, so I had no choice. I rammed into them with the bed of my truck. They fell and didn't get up. I looked over and one was standing extremely close to my window. I hit that one too. More started coming out of the buildings and started approaching my truck. I did a burnout and got out of the town before something could happen. I tried navigating an abandoned town in the dark with these things following me. My gas tank was running low. I drove out the way I came in and got onto the highway. I could see the silhouettes of them in my rearview mirror. It was an eerie sight. I decided I didn't want to continue my road trip after that encounter, so I started to make my way home. I stopped at a gas station, filled up, and headed back to my home state.